So before we really get into it here, I would like you to think of a person in your life, the customer, family member, someone you work with, something like that. You just have a really difficult time dealing with. Someone that you just, for whatever reason, you hate dealing with them. At one point or another, just think of that person in your head before we get started, and yeah, really focus on that for a second. So I want to tell you a story about a guy named Joe. This is a true story, by the way. Joe lived in Vancouver, British Columbia, and Joe was a drug addict. He started doing drugs when he was 10 years old, and when he was 16, he had a full-blown addiction to heroin, and was pretty much kind of on his way out. You know, he had reached rock bottom, you know, selling his shoes for drugs, and it was one day when he was in a park, and he asked a stranger for a couple bucks for cigarettes or something like that, and I think the guy gave him a cigarette and a couple dollars or something like that. But he said to him, "There's something different about you, man. You got a lot of potential inside of you. You could definitely do something with it." And Joe had heard that a couple times, but never really believed it himself. And this was kind of the point where Joe was like, you know what? Maybe this guy's right. I mean, when you get to the point where you're selling your shoes for heroin, something's kind of got to be done. So Joe did his best to get clean, got the help that he needed, and actually got a job as a door-to-door salesman, and turned out to have a pretty amazing life, actually. There's a little bit more to this story, but that's where I'm going to leave that story for now. There's another story I want to tell you. Girl goes into work. She's worked with this company for about 15 or so years. Just an outstanding employee, does everything right to the book. You know, never had an issue, never been written up, anything like that. And one day, all of a sudden, she starts in a new branch and things are working great for her, and she stops coming to work. She calls in sick multiple times, you know, a week. The times that she does come, she's very late. And the manager at the time is like, well, what's going on? This is weird. This employee's never had any issues, so brings her into the office and says, hey, you know, I've noticed that you've been late and called in sick quite a bit. You know, we really rely on you. We need you to be here on time. And, you know, from that day forward, the employee said, yeah, okay, I know, I'll be here on time, and I'll try to stay healthier and whatnot. So a couple of weeks go by, nothing changes. Still calling in sick, still, you know, showing up late when she does show up. So manager, frustrated because obviously they're short-staffed if this person isn't around, goes to the area manager and starts the terms to fire this person. Says, what do I need to do to fire this person? Having told you both those stories, I kind of want to talk about two different approaches to things. So there's probability, the probability that something will happen, and possibility. I hate carrying change with me. I absolutely hate it. I will avoid carrying change at all times. So usually if someone asks me for some change, I'm more than happy to give it to them because I don't want it anyways, because I don't really have a good change spot in my wallet. So it's like, yeah, here, take it. But I always make sure to say something, you know, positive to them, like, you know, hey, you know, you got any hobbies or anything? Maybe, you know, try and make some money doing that. Just something small, you know. But I learned this recently. I found it really helpful, so I thought I would share it to you guys. So when I give somebody, you know, like a homeless person some money, is it probable that they will spend it on like drugs or alcohol? Yeah, probably they will. But maybe I can imagine a scenario where they don't. And that's kind of where possibility comes in. Possibility is, you know, thinking kind of outside of what you see and trying to see kind of around something in this scenario. So can I imagine this person maybe going and using this money to buy a tie for, you know, a job interview or something like that? Or maybe buying some supplies to continue a hobby they like? Sure, I could totally imagine that. And that kind of leads back to the Joe story, where this guy who comes up and asks this guy for money and a cigarette, yeah, this guy's probably just going to buy drugs with it. Here you go, see you later. But the guy had the possibility to actually say, you know, there's something inside you, you know, it's possible that you could become something. And just that little statement was enough for Joe to kind of put things into perspective and really want to make a change. We have a habit of seeing things as they are and just assuming that things are how they are, and that's just what defines that thing. So one thing that's interesting is, as kids, we're all pretty similar. As we grow older and we get different experiences, that's where we kind of shape ourselves and turn into different things. But as kids, we are shaped by our experiences, the people around us, and things that we see every day. Nobody starts out exactly the same. Turns out exactly the same. So having said that, if you see something or somebody that is a certain way that maybe you don't like, or you're just, maybe there's something else to that person that you just don't know. So let's go back to Joe for a second. So Joe started doing drugs when he was 10 years old. But what I didn't tell you about this story is Joe had a phenomenal father. Joe and his father were super, super close. And they would do everything together, and they loved each other very much. And when Joe was 8 years old, his father passed away. Now, replacing his father was a stepfather who would tell Joe that you wouldn't amount to anything, you're not going to be anything, don't even try. Just basically, for some reason, he had a lot of anger inside of him. So Joe started to believe this because it was what he was told all the time. So by the time he was 10, he got into the wrong scenes, started doing drugs, and the more he did drugs, he thought, I'm not going to amount to anything anyways, so why even bother? It's not going to hurt anybody if I do drugs and I die. So when he heard from multiple people that were saying that there was something inside of him, it kind of reminded him of his father again, and all the things that his father used to say that he kind of forgot about. So these other people, seeing past what is and giving the possibility of what could be, drove Joe to, clean up his act, get things together, and now he runs a charity event every year where he bikes for kilometers at a time, miles if you're American. I'm not going to do the conversion, but you know what I'm talking about. When he raises money for people like that, they're in that same situation, and he's made a great living. He's making good money. He has a good life. All because just a couple people gave him a chance and didn't completely write him off. So that's Joe's story. It's pretty incredible. I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about the second story. So the manager who was going to fire this lady for calling in sick and showing up late went to the area manager and said, we need to fire this girl. Area manager said, well, let me talk to her real quick. So sat this lady down, found out that she was new to the area. She had just moved. She did not know how to drive in snowy conditions. So when she got out of bed in the morning, she saw the snow outside. She was kind of broke, so she couldn't afford winter tires. So she got very, very anxious, and some days just couldn't muster the courage to drive to work and would call in sick. Other days she would do it, but by the time that she actually pumped herself up, she was late. So she told this to the area manager. With this new information, the area manager bought her new snow tires for her car and also signed her up in winter driving lessons. And to this day, the employee still works for the same company. Everybody's happy, not an issue since. Just because they actually reached out and said, what's going on? And I think that's very important, and it's something that I wanted to share with you guys, that, just because you see something the way that it is, you gotta look past that. And as well, look forward. Imagine what that thing could be if maybe they looked at things a little bit differently than they do now. Really, really changed my outlook on a lot of things. Something that I learned recently. I thought, maybe you guys could apply it. And now go back to that person that you had thinking in your head in the first place. Maybe do a little bit of digging. Maybe there's something there that person just needs to bring forward. Thanks for listening.